This is content I've cribbed heavily from a big event we had in London early last month, where we announced some changes to our Code Assist product. The reason I'm cribbing it from this is that second thing, that case study, because I've worked with, I did the count yesterday, 36 customers so far this year, testing out our Code Assist product with their technology. And I've done it with Series A startups up through Fortune 5 customers here on the East Coast. They all have the same problem. The problem we have with these things is figuring out if they're working, defining success, and then evaluating success. Is this making my developers better? And I had a meeting last week where a customer said, I want 80% of my code auto-generated. And my answer to him was, no, you don't. That's not reality, and that's not going to get you to a better place. We tried that with Java 20 years ago. It sucked. And then we have other people who are more like my kind of hairline. They say, I want to go dig through Stack Overflow for 3 hours. No, you don't, because you're not making money at that point and you're not helping your customers. So where is that balance? And we're going to get into that a little bit, but the case study to me is the most important part. And then sort of what we take from these case studies, from all of the customers that me and my peers are working with, and where we're steering this technology. Because one thing we are at Google is we like to help steer the technology. We like to invent a lot of this stuff. A lot of the stuff you're talking about came out of Mountain View years ago. We use BeyondCorp, but a lot of the same principles. And the reason we're not in an app client is because everything inside Google's inside Chrome. And so us being in the browser is okay. But the case study part is the stuff that's the most interesting to me. And that's the stuff I wanted to share today. Looking a little bit like what we were talking about earlier with like, how are you scoping out these things? Aja, is that your name, right? Asta, I'm sorry. I suck at names. I'm so bad at them. But what Asta was talking about where's your data going? Like, that is scary stuff. If you're a company, especially if you're like a company that deals with intellectual property and high level stuff, HIPAA compliance or anything compliance, that's scary stuff. Code Assist, and this is the thing we make, and this is the totality of my little salesy pitch here. We build tools at Google Cloud for enterprise customers. We're not building this for John Hobbyist in a basement in Denmark with some open source project. When you're using Code Assist, your data never leaves your ivory tower. And this is what the design looks like. It's like we tie it into IAM controls in our cloud. We have license management for Code Assist in our cloud. You hit the Code Assist API directly out of the ID. All of that is logged. You can see the actual query that is being made against our LLMs from your end user's VS Code instance or IntelliJ instance. It's all logged for security. So you see the totality of that experience. Once it gets into our side, inside the little dotted lines, it's all 100% stateless. All of our AI modeling follows the same methodology. We don't use any of our enterprise customer stuff for training. If you want to contribute to training our model, go to gemini.google.com. If you're gonna go use this stuff and use the things we sell for money, we don't use your stuff. It's part of the agreement that we sign up with. Period. Full stop. There's no opt-in. There's no opt-out. We ain't trying to play that game. We're paranoid about customers to a ridiculous level. Didn't know if we're going to get to a live demo or not. This is what it looks like. This is VS Code. If you've never seen VS Code, if you're not an everyday developer, this is what everyday developers stare at all day long. Copilot, Q, us, they all look largely the same. There's a thing you pull into your IDE, your development environment. They all have plugin marketplaces. It's a plugin. You see a little chat window. You can ask it to explain code. You can highlight the code you want explained. You can highlight the code you want augmented. You can type in, you have a chat experience with the LLM that is focused around your code. It'll also do code generation. You literally say, generate an API endpoint, and it generates an API endpoint. When we get into the case study here in about 90 seconds, like that suggestion Whether that suggestion is good enough for the developer to accept is the absolute crux of all of it. That's the important thing. That's the thing everybody's laser focused on. Because if I'm taking the time, and I'm saying developer is a catch-all, everybody's a developer now. If you're an operations person, you're writing code to deploy your operations because you're deploying against clouds or vSpheres or whatever. If you're security, you're writing security policies. And we're all using the same kinds of tools. We're all using these IDEs. We're all using VS Code, IntelliJ, Codex, whatever, Xcode, whatever the things are. But we're all developers now. We're just developing different parts of our platforms. Everybody's a developer, so we all have the same experience. Code generation, code completion. This is where I get really lazy. I've been using Linux since before half the room was born, since the late 90s. And I still have to look up how to create a Linux cron tab entry every single time. I don't have to anymore. For that alone, and for writing README files for customers that I hate writing, it's worth my $19 a month. Period. I love it. But code completion, where it's taking the actual context of the open file, bouncing the whole file off of a large language model, and giving me suggestions back. And one of the cool things we're working on that's going to be in that last section is how we're making that even better. One of the things we're doing. That's what it looks like. And if I'm talking super fast, Ron, tell me to slow down. But I would like to get to where we can actually play with the thing. So this is the case study from London. Because it was in London, it's with a London customer. So it's with a UK customer, an energy company. But I have some correlations with East Coast customers here in the US. OVO, an energy supplier, they do a lot of green stuff over in the UK. NetPrimacy is one of our partners in the UK. They've been working together since 2015. So they have a 9+ year relationship with one another. So they're not just meeting on Tinder. This is what we get with most customers. When you say, hey, let's go Gen AI, your developer experience. Oh, let me stay near the mic. Yeah. I need a little mic to pull my thing. So when we have a customer and we say, let's go Gen AI your world, this is what we get most of the time. It's usually a bell curve. We have some people, like usually me 2 years ago, who are over on the right-hand side saying, I want to go search Stack Overflow forever. And we have the people way over on the left that say, I've already Gen AI'd my coffee maker. And then in the middle is where productivity lives. That boring hump in every bell curve is where actual value is. And it's the people that are pragmatic about, this might have some use. This might help me a little bit. Measuring productivity is hard. Who works every day with a software delivery team? Most, yeah, you are a software delivery team. It's probably you and 3 other guys at Series X. But getting metrics out of humans is a really hard thing. Yes, we know how many bugs they open and close. We know how many Jira tickets they open and close. We know how many lines of code they created. But we don't know if line number 413 last Thursday that they generated took 30 seconds or 3 days. It's hard to measure. And we don't know why it took 3 days. Was it just because they're 3 weeks out of college? Or was it because they were solving some incredibly complex problem that took a ton of research and a ton of thinking in the shower? Measuring developer productivity is hard. So that's the crux of what we've been working on for the past year, or what I've been working on, is how do we define success? And because this technology is all brand new, we're doing 30 and 60-day pilots with it with customers. Like, we're going to turn this on for you for 2 months, and we're going to get you to use it, and we're going to get some feedback from you. And then we're going to figure out if it worked or not. And that's exactly what this customer did. They did a 30-day trial. They used it for 30 days, and they sent some surveys to their developers and asked some questions. The results were what was really interesting. Well, I just ate all the meat off that slide. So they did a 30-day eval and then did some surveys, and we figured it out. And some of the interesting stuff was what they did really well, and why this ended up on a big stage with big names from Google, was they were really good about asking in the moment. And the developers are really good about giving live feedback. They said, hey, it's actually helping me with this. It's helping me write this unit test. Or it's not really helping me with this with this thing, it's hallucinating Java modules that don't actually exist. Or it's doing this well, it's not doing this well. But we were getting feedback in time. So they were giving us feedback actively throughout the process, which helps us because if you let someone think about it for 5 days, your feedback's going to be dramatically different than if you get feedback 5 minutes after it. Just ask me on I-40 when I'm going in the rain. Just gonna suck. So what did they learn? 74% of their developers felt more productive after a 30-day trial, which is phenomenal. And that means, okay, great. I get to go buy a boat this year because I'm on a sales number. Maybe. But then let's define productive. Like how much time did you save? And they asked those questions. This is an energy company in the UK. In a Fortune, I think they're Fortune 10 customer here on the East Coast in the US that I've been working with. We just finished their pilot about 6 weeks ago. They saw 68% on the exact same question. So we're seeing correlations. I'm seeing numbers in the high 60s, mid 70s for most customers after 30 and 60-day trials. When we ask this question consistently, 60 to 75% of them say, I do feel more productive with this tool in my toolbox. So that's awesome, great. So that's a thing. That's a thing we want to keep focusing on. How much more productive did they feel? 5%. Okay, that's a little wind out of the sails. 5% ain't great. Until you start thinking about how many hours a developer works. 5% a month, 5% is 2 hours every week. That means they're saving a day every month. So just by sticking that checkbox in their VS Code, you're getting an extra day of productivity every month after 30 days of testing. That is a gold mine. That is an absolute gold mine. When you're a larger company and you have 1,000 developers, you just saved 1,000 days of labor. Or you got, more importantly, I didn't save labor. I had 1,000 more days productivity out of my existing labor force. That is huge at scale. This is the number that is most important to us right now at Google. This is the thing we're really hammering in on. What is the code acceptance rate? So in that little screenshot where it made a suggestion or it generated code out of whole cloth for me, during this 30-day window, 1 out of 5 of those were accepted. Because we log everything, we know. So we get actual reliable metrics about what percentage of your code that we suggest, actually your developers think is good enough to stick in the code. When you hit the tab button and it fills it in for you. 20%, 1 out of 5. Okay, that needs to be higher. Because now I'm making you read 4 things that you don't want to use. And I want that number to go up. That's where we're laser focused. That's where we're really driving. We want the acceptance rate to be higher. Current focus in most of our engineering efforts. Trust feedback. That's all. The reason that's important is because it's all about trust, and I want to get it from this day is so bad. I've almost walked out like 4 more times. Trust replaces the hype train. If I'm using a tool and it's cool, I'll play with it for a week. Just ask my 8-year-old. If I'm using a tool and it's useful to me long term, I trust it. It becomes a habit. It becomes institutional. It becomes something that is being leveraged at scale. Generating trust is what we're looking for. The reason we want that acceptance rate to go up is to make developers trust this tool so they can use it and get more work done. What's that?
So I think with that acceptance rate, so a lot of times I'll type stuff in, but you know what I want? So it's not really your fault. But it also maybe I get on the second try where it could take me.
But it's my fault that prompt wasn't quite good enough to give you the quality answer.
Yeah, but
part of it to you. You might be asking a bad question. Yeah.
It's the wrong question.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what I want either.
Yep.
So
and
I think 20%.
No, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But I want it closer to 50.
50, but getting to 100 would be not reasonable.
The mechanics, it'll never be 100.
Yeah.
Because then we start talking about AI generating code, and then we all end up as Terminators. Yeah.
It's like asking the barista, what coffee do I want?
Yeah.
Which I do sometimes, and I never enjoy it. Because Americanos are and everyone thinks they're great. But driving that up, and the reason where that is coming from, that part of it is because when you type that prompt in the chat window, or you put a little comment and hit Control Enter, and you want it to generate a suggestion, there's a whole grammar semantic layer that it's being processed through that is then taking your prompt, augmenting it into the actual prompt that gets made. And so where we're focused on that part of it is making the grammar engine, where it understands what you're asking for. And more importantly, it's understanding what you're asking for within the context of what you're doing. So we taking the code from the open file, we're taking the code from the whole repository that you have checked out, and then using that to better inform. And that's one of the big things we're working on. So we want you to trust it. We don't want you to trust it like with your bank account, but we want you to trust it with the suggestions that it's making. Again, survey results, I forgot to skip this slide. Again, what's it good for? It's not good for solving the problem. It's not good for saying, I want to go do a thing that does a new thing. It's good for running unit tests. It's good for cruft and cruft. It's good for, I write one getter or setter or all of those developer words that I don't fully understand because I was a history major, and then repeating them consistently to fulfill the rest of the code base for you. It's good for time saving. It's not good for having new thoughts. Computers are not good at having new thoughts. That's why humans exist. Computers are really good at not getting bored. So what's next? Competitor, in this slide is what's next for that customer from this case study. Competitor analysis. We walked out the door and Copilot walked in. After Copilot was key. We assume that. If you have not seen or heard a new announcement about generative AI models in 24 hours, you're 18 hours behind. It is constant. We make an announcement, then Anthropic makes an announcement, then AWS makes an announcement, then Claude, and then OpenAI, and then it's our turn again. It is a revolving door of improvement, and it's going to be that way for the next 2 or 3 years. It is insane the amount of resources being pumped into this platform to make them good, to do good work. It is insane. And I can say that having seen how many resources we're throwing at it. Insanity. Good insanity, but insanity.
Hey, Jamie,
Yeah.
like 5-7 minutes. You want to try and get to your day?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up. So the one thing I want to throw out there, the where we're going, industry trends, we'll skip through all this stuff. This is just all about, hey, the tool, we want the tool to be more useful. We have a couple of different models that we're throwing at it. So we have different versions of our largest LLM. Our current flagship LLM is called Gemini 1.5. We have versions of it that they both accept 2 million tokens, which is about 8 million ASCII characters. One of them has faster responses. So one of them is used inside the code completion, where the other one is used to do larger process, like index your entire code base. And then the thing we announced we'll get to the slide. There we go. I'm just going to jump through this. So one of the things we announced in London is what's called code customization, where not only are you using Code Assist inside your developer windows, but you can have Code Assist go out to your code bases and turn them into vector databases that are then used RAG style to augment your answers. So we're able to index your entire code base, turn it into a vector DB, and use that vector database to translate your answers through to drive your acceptance rate up. Now it knows more about how you name functions. Now it knows more about how you cast variables and tendencies, patterns and anti-patterns inside the way your developers work. Because we can go solve problems 900 different ways and get to a solution. But we only know, by default, our models only know what's out on the internet that it's been trained on. And again, all of that stuff, all of that training never leaves your space. It never leaves your project. It's never used on our side of the fence. So let's get to something fun. This is, if you've never seen it before, this is a code one. This is one of our cloud workstations, which is just a Linux box running the open source version of VS Code. Hi, Jamie, how can I help? And we're on hotel Wi-Fi, so this might stink, but we're going to find out in a second. Create, and I'm going to throw it a very open-ended question. Create, if I could type, a Python class that handles all CRUD operations for a GCS. Now I'm using GCS because I work for Google. Same thing would work for S3. Very poor quality prompt. I did not ask it a good question. And we'll see what it comes up with. So this is bouncing out to our API inside a project that I created and use for these kind of sandbox environments. We're going to see what happens. Wish I had a Jeopardy theme song. Internet connectivity does affect this a little bit, but here we are. So I can drop this puppy. I can run a diff. If I were looking for translations, I can click this button and it would show what it suggested next to what exists. But since I have nothing, so I'll open it in the file. And I've got GCS Bucket Manager. Class, it's got all of the proper doc strings, which I suck at. So it's done all of that annoying copy, rinse, repeat work for me. I don't have to deal with all that. I have create bucket, list objects in a bucket, upload an object to a bucket, download an object from a bucket, delete an object from a bucket, delete a whole bucket. Gave me all of that out of the box. Cool. I'll save this. Control S, call it bucket.py. I'm a Python guy, so now I have this file called bucket.py. Because I have it open, it's going to be part of the context for any other questions I have. So now, go back to my little Code Assist window. I can say, create a Flask application. And if you're not a Python person, Flask is a web framework written in Python. Create a Flask application that exposes the methods in bucket.py. So I've gone from 0 to a relatively fully featured Python class to deal with a cloud storage product in 12 seconds. Now I'm going to a web app to expose those classes in another 12 seconds or so. And while we're waiting, not only did it give me the code, but it explained what was most important for me. The improvements, all of these different things. Now, this guy, again, I can open this in a file. Yes. We'll call this one main.py because that's what Flask likes to name stuff. Now I have create bucket, list blobs. Now I have an entire web API that I could go deploy in about 5 seconds on my cloud workstation, or because I'm an old Kubernetes nerd, create a Docker file to deploy the Flask app in main.py. I'm not asking it hard stuff here. It's not, I'm not doing any prompt engineering. All I have to do is reference the file name. And because I have that giant context window that I'm able to leverage, I'm able to suck in all those files and act on them intelligently. We'll see what this did. So she decided to use Python 3.9. Not sure why. That might be something that I want to investigate because there are newer versions than Python 3.9. But it's giving me a Docker file that just looking at this Docker file. So I can go create a container. So I went from 0 to a Python app to deal with Google Cloud Storage, to a web app to deal with Google Cloud Storage, to a container running a web app to deal with Google Cloud Storage, and still have 4 minutes to figure out what to fill this demo up with. Now, these are very simplistic questions. And the interesting stuff is this is a huge chunk of what developers have to do every day. Say you've got a junior developer that's 2 years out of NC State. Said, go deploy a web app to handle dealing with this cloud store, these volumes in cloud storage that we need to deal with. Here's your Jira story. How long would it take them? How much value would that thing? That is absolutely required all over the map. We all have to make those things every day. There's no ROI there. There's no way to monetize this. There's no way for this to provide new value to my customers from my company, but it is absolutely essential. We're going to deal with S3. We're going to deal with GCS. We're going to deal with Maps API. We're going to deal with all these different things. For a junior developer, and we're all hiring junior developers these days, it's going to take them 6 or 7 hours to come up with that by digging through Google's Docs and Stack Overflow. We did it in less than 3 minutes. Now, is it perfect? No. If I go over here to bucket.py, let's say list blobs. And if I want to highlight this and say, make this more secure, now, because I've highlighted something, this is understood. So that grammar engine understands when I have something highlighted, this means what I've got highlighted. And let's see if it can make anything. We're right at time. Let's see if it makes anything more secure, and then we'll pivot over to the next person. So more secure, do this. And then I can see what it's doing differently. It's going to show that to me in a window. I can decide if I want to take that in. So Gen AI, and I'll turn off my screen share. Generative AI is not taking anyone's job. Like that whole nefarious thing. The funniest part to me in the world is like I'll be sitting at Costco and some guy's walking by wearing his New Balances and canvas and khaki shorts, talking about how Gen AI is, they're building some evil model. It would take an entire Costco to train a simple LLM full of servers. There's about 8 of us on the planet that can train an LLM that could do nefarious things. And we're all publicly traded. Amazon can't hide a $500 million hole in their Q3 earnings. And that's how much money it would take to train one of these things to do something. It's not coming for our jobs. It's coming to let us go solve more meaningful problems. That's its goal. That's our goal. You go think about the hard stuff. We'll figure out how to deal with the GCS bucket. Cool. Questions, thoughts, concerns?